Welcome to the Black Catholic Messenger Show, where we keep it black and we keep it Catholic. I'm Nate Tenner.
I'm Alessandra Harris.
And today we're joined by one of our co-founders, Stephen Staten, and two of our Asian American collaborators, Jessica Yap, who's a member of the BCM team, and Rosalie Chan, who is a friend of the publication. And Stephen, Jessica, and Rosalie are also leaders of a new Bay Area racial justice coalition called St. Martin's Corner. Take it away, Stephen.
Hello, everyone. So I just wanted to begin the discussion by saying that Catholics are directly called to solidarity as a demand. And so I just wanted to say that at Black Catholic Messenger, we're in unanimous solidarity with Asians. And that's just how it's got to be. And so this is a very important topic because this is an intersection of struggles. This is, it's in the news. People's lives are on the line. We have political movements which are moving to advance justice for Asian Americans. But also we need to deal with how we're going to move forward, how we're going to, had an alarm there. Also, we need to deal with how we got to move forward, and specifically in response to folks who would like to use these particular tragedies as ways to pit different populations and to pit these different struggles and people against each other in the United States. And we can't stand for that because as Catholics, we're in solidarity. So I just wanted to open the floor and just let everybody just talk about this really important issue. It's important for Black people, important for Asian people, and important for all people and for the church. So anybody can go ahead and share what they want to do, what they want to share, and yeah.
I think your alarm went off because it's time. It's past time that we start talking about this stuff.
It's past time. That's why the alarm went off. You know, it's already been time, you know.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stephen. And I really appreciate that. Just kind of that forceful, firm call to solidarity. Unfortunately, and I don't know if this is your experience, Rosalie, I feel when it comes to issues of racial injustice, so specifically, right, this past week with the shooting in Atlanta, actually, I'm not too sure how familiar listeners will be with it, so I guess I'll summarize it, and then we can kind of, take a few steps back and look at the big picture. But specifically what happened was, I think, 21-year-old kid of a pastor. He was white, saying that he struggled with a sex addiction, but went to shoot up specifically Asian massage parlors. And I feel like in the face of that, media and just normal citizens who heard about this news were so quick to say, oh, it wasn't racially motivated. He was tormented, or he was struggling with his own thing, his own troubles. He was having a bad day, is I think what one of the officers in the area was saying at a press conference about his motive. And so this kind of like, we're not white, we're not Black. Where do we stand? And oftentimes at large, society is just kind of like, it's kind of like being made invisible often when it comes to these injustices. And I wonder, Rosalie, if you have thoughts on that too, just kind of like talking about race as an Asian American and having that discourse in America where there doesn't really seem to be space in the binary that we often find ourselves in.
Yeah, what you were saying about invisibility, I totally resonate with that a lot. I think part of that comes with, Asian Americans are, even though they're one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing demographic in the US, they're still a minority in much of the US besides California. And so people often overlook Asian American issues. And then another thing is Asian Americans are often held up because of the model minority myth as kind of an example saying, hey, like they don't experience racism, like they experience all these hardships, but they're doing fine. And first off, it's not really true. And second off, that's just a myth that white supremacy creates to pit different groups against each other. So yeah, I think definitely hearing about this news is really tough. And I think also seeing how I'm a journalist myself, but I think also seeing how a lot of media tends to frame these headlines, like focusing on how he has a sex addiction, or kind of focusing on his perspective rather than the perspectives of those who's like the family members of those who got killed, or the friends of those who got killed. I think that's been pretty frustrating, and it's interesting how people will jump to any other reason besides like people like, I guess it's like like Long, the person who killed all these people. It was easier for him to admit to killing these people than it was to admitting to racism. And it just seems like, whether it's the media, whether it's the police, whether, it's himself, like people are willing to jump to any other conclusion. But they don't want to, instead of saying like, hey, racism is a real problem, and that's the reason behind this.
Yeah, it's interesting. This kind of like, I will avoid at all cost calling it, naming what it is. And I'm curious for anybody on the call, right? Experiences of that in your own life when race was clearly the issue, racism, bigotry. It was, in fact, that, and yet experiencing people bending over backwards to call it anything but. Because I think that's something that all of us in one degree or another have experienced, even though we're not all the same race.
Well, I think it's really interesting also to note that since President Trump really vocally was calling the coronavirus the China virus and really trying to hit the problems with the pandemic on China, there's been a rise in Asian American hate crimes. And when we're talking about race, I've seen in the media a lot where it's portrayed that Black Americans are the ones who are committing a large amount of the hate crimes against Asian Americans. And I also live in the Bay Area, and to a certain extent, we can't deny that some of the people who have committed these type of violent crimes, especially against elderly people, have been African American. But I think it's interesting to also note that that's what the media has chosen to portray, that they've chosen to focus on when an African American is responsible for that. And when a white person is responsible for killing 8 people and 6 of them are Asian American, then all of a sudden we no longer spotlight the fact that the person's white. We spotlight, like you said, that he had a sex addiction or that he had a really bad day, like the police officer said. So when it's a Black person who was committing the crime, then we go back to the trope that all Black people are violent, that Black males commit crimes at a higher rate than other people. Yet when it comes to a white person, then it goes into explaining his motives. And like you said, like I've seen more about him and his history than I've seen about the victims of the crime. I haven't seen the exposés in the magazines where they're giving us a really detailed bio of who these people were, what type of lives they've lived, what their families are like. It's almost like you said, that they're invisible in a way, that they're these victims who don't deserve the same honor and respect as other victims of mass shootings. But when we're talking about African Americans committing the crimes, I think it's interesting to note that the Brookings Institute on March 11th, 2021, had an article that said a recent study finds that, in fact, Christian nationalism is the strongest predictor of xenophobic views of COVID-19, and the effect of Christian nationalism is greater among white respondents compared to Black respondents. Moreover, Black Americans have also experienced high levels of racial discrimination since the pandemic began. Hence, not only does the frame of 2 minoritized groups in conflict ignore the role of white national populism, but it also absolves the history and systems of inequality that position them there. So like I said, even though a lot of times the media and the police are spotlighting when it's an African American committing the crime, that they actually aren't at any larger amount committing them than white people. and it's actually a smaller amount. So I think that part of having this conversation is looking at the anti-Black sentiments in the media and among the police that continues the narrative.
Which is really just using Asian Americans as a tool, as a talking point. Like it has nothing to do with, caring about these people as human beings, but like how can we use this to sell a story, which is really vile. And you see more and more of it, of course, in a case of a violent or like where people die. But yeah, it's gross.
Yeah.
it's also, go on, Stephen.
Yeah, I was gonna say that that's really the part that gets me, is just that when we're talking about racial justice for anyone, it's like as soon as it's really funny, like that as soon as more than one group is shown to be going through some type of discrimination or some type of injustice, as soon as more than one group is being shown, I really noticed that the white supremacist systems just kick into gear, where people are basically saying, like, what I've seen, people are telling Asian people to be quiet about this and to not speak up about these particular things. And I specifically, I even saw on it was really, really disturbing. I saw on Babylon B, what's his name from Babylon B had tweeted out and said that said something really disparaging about Black people, that we're like taught from birth all these things, and that that quote unquote
We're taught to
the left,
see everything as oppression.
yeah, and to see everything as oppression, and like it was gaslighting, because yeah, I mean, from birth, I mean, babies experience discrimination. Black babies experience discrimination. There's even a higher rate of childbirth mortality with Black women. So like it's racism even goes to the even before birth, and it's just like it's very deep. And then to use to make a statement and talk about how, oh, Black people are taught from birth to like, oh, to ask, oh, is this about my race? We're taught about that through our experiences. We're taught about when I'm in as a young person, as a Black person, and I'm in school, and I have students, this has happened to me before, ask me, oh, why are Black people's noses so wide? Or students asking me to, or telling me, oh, to go eat watermelon and to drink Kool-Aid as a child. When I'm experiencing those things, I'm learning that this has to do with my race. And it's just, it's maddening, because the way that things like this are said, to sort of, what it does, it pathologizes the Black experience. Like, oh, there's something wrong with you. Oh, you think it's about race, and then people will continue to attack you and continue to prod you and gaslight you. Oh, it has nothing to do with that, nothing to do with that. And then when you speak up about it, oh, you're the problem. And then in this specific tweet, I'm going to pull it up for later, but like he said that, oh, the left wishes this on Asian people. And then he says, oh, the left wants, he said, quote, like, independent, hardworking or something, hardworking or something people. Let me just look this up. But he was basically also facilitating the other piece of white supremacy, which is the model minority myth, which is saying, oh, this minority is they're hardworking, they're upstanding citizens, and oh, they're very nice, and so they should be more like you all should be more like them. The Black people, oh, they're not, they're not independent, they're easily manipulated, is what it's like. It's really maddening. But yeah, I've seen it all the time.
NPR put out a story about that specific thing, right?
About the model minority, about this particular statement.
Model minority myth.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, they just put out a story.
And Stephen, while you're looking up that tweet, I would be interested to hear a little bit more from Jessica or Rosalie from the Asian American perspective, what that means when people are talking about the model minority.
Yeah, I think kind of what Stephen was saying about gaslighting, that's such a real thing. Um, I think with the model minority myth, it's basically kind of a myth that, Asians are doing fine, like they're successful in society, and therefore like racism, that it's proof because Asians are doing economically well, if you, I guess, average it out, then it's proof that racism is not really a real issue, which that's not true at all. Like, first of all, there's a lot of income disparities within Asian Americans. And also, second of all, Asians still very much experience racism, as these recent events show, and these recent anti-Asian attacks show as well. So I think there's a lot of gaslighting that happens to be like, oh, well, you're not really experiencing racism; it's something else. In this case, like, oh, this person had a sex addiction. This has nothing to do with race, when in reality it is connected. So yeah, definitely feel like there's like a lot of gaslighting that comes with the model minority myth.
I had to be disabused of the notion myself because having grown up in a very binary community, as we were discussing before, between white and black, like my exposure to Asian Americans was so low that I bought into that myth. And it wasn't until I traveled overseas where, ironically, my interaction in this story was with an Asian American who was living abroad. And he's from the Hmong community and in the upper Midwest. And this was the first time I'd ever heard of a longstanding Asian American community that does not experience this, socioeconomic prosperity that I had always associated with Asian Americans and with the few Asian Americans that I actually knew personally. And I was like, wow, it was like I was finally learning systemic racism isn't just about anti-blackness, but it's about white supremacy. It's like, it doesn't matter who else it is. If you're not white, you're going to be able to find a long history of these other groups, non-white groups, being discriminated against, especially in specific communities within these larger cities where they're just targeted and ghettoized and oppressed. And a lot of people don't hear those stories partly because of the media and partly because we associate our experience with reality, when in reality our experience is really just our experience, our little bubble. It's not representative of the national situation.
As I've been learning more, and I feel like the hate crimes and the shooting really made me do a little bit more research myself. And like you said, Nate, kind of check my own biases. And one thing that I have learned is that when the U.S. and someone else could talk a little bit more about the history of exclusion of Asian Americans from the U.S., but when the U.S. did change the criteria and started allowing highly specialized skilled workers from different Asian countries to come over to the U.S., then they were people who were already more successful and had more education and had more income. So when they came to America, because of racism, they weren't able to be at that same level status here. So a lot of times where they could end up moving and starting a business was in African American communities, because they were not afforded the opportunities to be in white communities. So because of this, a lot of the people who started businesses in African American communities then felt that they were pitted against the African Americans in those communities who themselves didn't have the access to capital and the opportunity to build their own businesses in their own communities. So a lot of times, and like you were saying, Stephen, that when it comes to pitting the Black communities against Asian communities, obviously people who come to the country and have already resources and have education are in a position of advantage over African Americans who have been denied good education, denied the access to capital, denied the opportunity to build wealth because of things like redlining. denied opportunities to have equal access to the opportunities that white people have in the country. So instead of looking at Asian people versus Black people, then it's really looking at what has white supremacy did to both of these communities that have denied them the opportunities that white people have had for centuries.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go on.
I was just gonna say that that I totally agree with that. And it's the main, like, examples like that are just show just the effects of white supremacy because of that system and the disadvantage of the Black community and the descendants of enslaved persons here in the United States. Because of that history, we don't have the same access to capital. We don't have those businesses. And then so when someone else comes in and has those businesses, and specifically when it's a business that caters to our interests, like there's the understanding that a lot of Black hair stores are owned by Asian Americans, and it's like, wow, you know, this is a business catering to our needs as a community, but it's not owned by us. And that's a more a systemic issue, and it can be easy to look at, you know, who's owning the business now and go like, aha, but it's actually a bit deeper than just that one person. And I think that story is important to talk about.
Yeah, and I think also another thing I've noticed about the model minority myth and what makes it so dangerous is that I've seen a lot of Asian Americans buy into it too and use that to justify a lot of anti-Black racism. Because, you know, I've definitely seen, unfortunately, some Asian Americans say like, oh, well, you know, we also experience discrimination, but, you know, we're doing fine economically. You know, why can't other people do it? And I think that's what's, again, this is a myth that's created by white supremacy, but that's what's dangerous about it, is that when you know, us as people of color, we buy into it, that's what creates these divisions, when we should all be focusing on fighting racism and fighting and working towards racial justice.
And I think it's important to note that, like, Black people have legitimately experienced racism by people in the AAPI community, as well as Asian people legitimately experiencing racism and xenophobia from Black Americans. And what we're not just saying like, oh, it's a white people problem, but we're saying that how has white supremacy influenced other cultures where we're also participating in that, and where we're also discriminating against other people and you know, having stereotypes about other people, and that's affecting our behavior. So looking at ourselves, our communities, and saying, what are we going to do to stop this?
Yeah, it's really important to do that. And I just wanted to give just a little story as to just what happens, you know, when that happens. I know, like, that tweet that I had mentioned before, at the end of the tweet, he says, what he says is that he says Black Americans are taught from birth to deeply feel every look, comment, slight, and failure, connected with traumas of their ancestors, and silently ask themselves, is it because I'm Black? I wouldn't wish that existence on anyone. The left wishes it on the Asian community. And so that statement right there is, number one, you're
Trash.
trash. It is trash. You're attempting to silence Black Americans from the oppression and discrimination that we face even before we're born. And what you're also doing is utilizing the model minority myth, because it's like a little thread that he goes into, and he talks about, and he says, the left want to take strong, independent people and turn them into segregated Asians. So he's like, oh, strong, independent Asians or whatever, and then he wants to stop them from doing that. And then he goes on to share, like, I think it's like a Black person who agrees with them, and he goes on to share like a link to this. So it's like that's another thing. You have like the tokenization going on. It's like, oh, this Black person agrees with what I say. Let me put this one out. The little story I had was that these sorts of things are it's how the system reveals itself, because that same type of thing was used when I spoke out on my social media about standing in solidarity with Asian people, I said that, you know, as a Black man, I stand in solidarity with Asian Americans, and white supremacists don't want to see that. But it doesn't matter. You know, that's who I am and what I'm going to do. And that's pretty much all I said. And I faced immediate backlash, and from a white person who commented angrily on the post, sent like a video montage of Black people committing crimes, legit, sent this video montage and the link. Then after I was like, you know what, I can't do this. So I got rid of that. And then he proceeded to send me multiple audio messages afterwards, multiple audio messages personally, talking about, you know, how this is, you know, how he disagreed, but like specifically what he was saying, not in the audio messages and in his comments and things like that. What he was telling me is that, oh, but you know, these crimes are committed by, what do you say? Oh, they're committed in Oakland and they're not reporting who did it. Oh, I wonder why they're not reporting. And I'm like, okay, and because I mean, I know what he's trying to say. What he's saying is that, but the Blacks are doing it. You know, the Blacks are attacking Asian people, and he's placing this out here, even though my whole statement, all I was talking about was that I'm in solidarity and I don't support the violence, and that I support all y'all, and like y'all are family. And then like you have this person who just can't deal with that, and who's like, no, but the Blacks are doing it, right? Don't talk in solidarity. Don't be in solidarity. No. I have to keep this division going on.
Catholic guy?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, it happens in the church, unfortunately. I mean, what can we say? So.
And I mean, I think it's important to also talk about this Christian nationalism that's responsible for so much of this anti-Asian sentiment, because, and you know, I really hope that Catholics don't fall prey to Christian nationalism, because we are part of the universal church, which, and our, you know, our mission is to spread the gospel message to all parts of the world. But when Christian nationalism looks at the United States of America and says that we are God's chosen nation, and when they say we, it means white Americans who are straight and have a family, that, you know, we're the chosen nation and that everyone else is somehow less than. And it's like, as Catholics who are called to be part of a universal church, we have to reject that. We have to understand that every single person is made in the image and likeness of God, and that every person throughout the whole world deserves to be part of God's kingdom. And I Jessica, you were going to say something, but I think that it's really important for Catholics to understand the urgency of rejecting this, this, you know, sentiment that says that Chinese people or China is responsible for COVID, and that therefore people who are of Asian descent, that somehow they deserve to be scapegoated for what's happening with the pandemic.
No, thank you. I was going to bring up the same exact point. I wanted to talk with you all about how this is playing out in the church and what can be done to really protect against that, because it is a cancer. It is, or yeah, maybe I shouldn't use the allusion to illness, but you know, it's evil. It's evil to have this sort of rhetoric be embodied. And I kind of see it on the fringes. Like Where Peter is another publication that kind of tries and bring report on those fringes, because I think a lot of times bishops, leadership, either they don't have training or competency, they're not engaged in this area, or they're just so busy that they don't see these kind of fringe movements come up, and then it becomes mainstream. And so, yeah, it can't happen. It can happen in the church. I don't want it to happen in the church. But it is quite curious just how Christian nationalism is, yeah, it's starting to take over. I see it on Twitter. I see it in faith spaces I used to work in. Yeah.
So what is our Well, actually, one thing I wanted to ask you guys about is how are you guys fighting it via St. Martin's Corner? Because I know that's one of the goals of the organization, and you guys have been working at that for pretty much the same amount of time, same time period as BCM. So yeah, how is that going? How is it becoming a tool for fighting this and within the church?
Yeah, I think more than anything, I think it's become a community for people to talk about issues of racial justice. Because several people who are part of St. Martin's Corner, they talked about how, um, within their parish communities, they wanted to talk more about racism or their experience, or, from people of color, their experiences of racism. But other people were, not really seeing it as a priority or being like, "Oh, are you sure it's really racism?" Or, just kind of completely dismissing it. So several people in St. Martin's Corner kind of had these similar experiences, and unfortunately, from Catholic communities they were part of. So I think more than anything, it's a safe space in the community for people to spread awareness and talk about these issues of racial justice and how it affects ourselves and also the greater community around us.
Yeah, I've been able to have conversations with leadership and with members that I would, like 7 years in ministry, not even able to approach it. And what St. Martin's Corner has been up and running for less than a year. So I appreciate just kind of a space where you can come. I mean, it is still hard. I think a lot of people are coming from different places, and there's a lot of, like I had a one-on-one conversation with a member the other week. That was a little difficult. But St. Martin's Corner like provided the space to have that conversation instead of it just becoming what Stephen encountered, someone just kind of like trying to prove the other person wrong and not even be open to anything. So
Do you guys have any events coming up? What has St. Martin's Corner been up to right now?
Yeah, so we're gonna have a meeting first Monday in April, so you all are invited. Eddie, who is another friend of BCM, is going to have a presentation about the immigration and the border crisis. So that should be really interesting. And yeah, that's pretty much what's next.
yeah, it's really cool. We welcome members to, they're free to put together their own conversation or bring their own topic and facilitate that. And then it just kind of opens up to the group to freely talk. And that's the first Monday of each month. Really chill. A space to also like grow friendships and relationships. And then the second Monday of every month, or sorry, the third Monday of every month is a leadership meeting. And that's where we kind of find more tactical things. Anyone is free to join that as well. But yeah, so first Monday of the month is conversation. Third Monday is more tactical leadership stuff, and people are welcome to come to both.
And St. Martin's Corner has a pretty strong Asian American contingent. Is that right?
I think there's a good number. I think we have a couple of people from the St. Clair Chinese Catholic community in San Jose or slash Santa Clara. And then yeah, several people from St. Dominic's in San Francisco as well. But yeah, people kind of are from all over.
That's awesome. Awesome that you guys have that going. And yeah, I'm glad that everyone was here for this conversation today. Is there anything else? Any parting shots anybody wants to provide?
I did want to say that what was I about to say? So I did want to say I do believe that the Spirit is moving in this time period. I really do believe that, because this whole conversation is something that I wouldn't have even imagined would happen in, I don't know, 2 weeks. I don't know when the last time I would imagine. I haven't imagined it. Is that we're speaking about solidarity between peoples. We're speaking about coming together. We're speaking about being in the same human family. And this is exactly what the church is teaching. Like, and for all of, the missteps and all of the various ideologies which are trying to take over the church. You know, you got some folks on the fringes who want to, you know, push the church one way or the other. They're afraid of the church being a one world religion. I'm like, well, what you think Catholicism is other than a one world religion? Like, what are you talking about? Despite all of that, the Spirit is moving right now. And I'm like, wow, oh my God, like we're actually coming together. And I'm definitely adding this whole movement in my prayer intentions, really. Yeah, but it's just like, wow, I didn't think I would come to the day that we're really publicly talking about collaboration. And there are some pretty prominent folks who are picking this up, you know, in government and in racial justice circles. And it's not the, I don't know if y'all are used to it, but sometimes within the racial justice movement, there's some struggles, right, between different people and like what this person said or that person said and groups. But collaboration, like that's amazing. And I do think the Spirit is moving right now, because it's like, wow, like I'm feeling like when I wrote a piece about this, just like our BCM Solidarity that's coming out. And really in that piece, I talk about how in solidarity, and this is what the church is calling us to. This is what the Lord calls us to. We're all in the same body of Christ. We're made in the image and likeness of God. We're together. And I talk, and this section in the catechism I'm talking about talks about how when we're thinking about solidarity and justice, it's like when we have this sort of concept of the other, they're not really an other. It's the other isn't another self. It's like another self. It's a connection, right? It's not like you're going through some oppression, you're going through some hardship, and it has nothing to do with me, and I'm just going to step back and let you go through it. No, it's like, wow, this is an extension of me. Like, how can I help? How can I be there for you? How can I amplify your voice? How can I build virtue? How can, like, there's so many things. And like, yeah, but yeah, just a big summary of how I believe that this is a moment that the Holy Spirit is working. You know, he's always working, you know, and the Lord, you know, how we say, you know, he may not come when you want him, you know, but he's always
Right on time.
right on time. Amen.
Stephen, I love how you're talking about the Holy Spirit moving, and I feel like it is an invitation for us to remember here at Black Catholic Messenger that people in the AAPI community are our neighbor, and that we love them, even though we're focused on, elevating the voices of Black Catholics, that we're also, like you said, in solidarity. And we hope that all people in the church will see that as an opportunity too, which we're asking for Black Catholics to be included, and that you can reach across the aisle to Asian Americans, to Black Catholics, to Latinx people, that, like you said, we're all one, and that we have to really recognize that and know that. Rosalie, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think it's also important to recognize that white Christian nationalism is a very big issue, in Protestant Christianity and also in the Catholic Church as well. And we've already seen several incidents of terrorism and extremism rooted in white Christian nationalism. And, the truth is the Catholic Church is a very universal church. There's people from, Asia and Africa and Latin America, North America, Europe, etc., who are part of the Catholic Church. And the thing is, unfortunately, Christian nationalists, they see this and they're scared of it. They're used to having a white-centric religion. And so that's why, it is really important that we recognize that this is an evil force that is playing out within Christianity. And that's why it's so important that, we keep speaking out about racial justice, the issues that people of color face, and, racism from within these religious communities as well.
Yeah.
Jessica?
Thanks, Nate. I guess I'd just like to offer encouragement, especially to Asian American listeners, to keep on doing internal work and working within our own communities, because, it's not just one community hurting the other. Like we all have been harmed and we all harm anti-Blackness is very much a thing in Asian communities. Might look different than how it happens in white communities, but the fact of the matter is that, like all you have said, like we are one. We are like really brothers and sisters. And what does that look like? It means taking responsibility. It means kindness. Something as basic as kindness. It means humility in owning up to the ways that we contribute to the way the church is. Like, because we are the church. It's not like, oh, that church over there, how terrible. Like by our baptism, like we're all members of the church. And so just encouragement to keep on doing the good work. And Thanksgiving too for like BCM. Thanks for having us, and St. Martin's Corner, getting to grow those relationships, because the spirit really is. I'm grateful to see it happen in such a tangible way right now.
And for people who want to learn more about you, Jessica, Stephen, or Rosalie, and St. Martin's Corner, can you give us, drop the links where we can find you?
Yeah,
for sure. We have a Facebook page and Twitter, I think, too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very not active on Twitter. We're trying to build a presence. We post event announcements regularly on Facebook, though.
And what is the username?
For Twitter, we could not fit the whole
Or
name.
for Facebook?
Oh, Rosalie, do you know it off the top of your head?
I think it's just St. Martin's Corner. Sorry, we were like, I'm not on Facebook, but I would assume it's that. But we can send the links, and then you guys can include that as well.
Yeah, we'll drop it in the show note.
And Nate, where can people find Black Catholic Messenger?
Twitter, BLKCATH Stories, Facebook, Black Catholic Messenger, Instagram, Black Catholic Messenger, YouTube, an unpronounceable stream of letters and numbers that we don't have to explain because it'll be linked in the tweet for this show.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to us on YouTube and our podcast.
She's got it. St. Martin de Porres, pray for us. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. BCM out.